Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to a very powerful episode of the Transform with Angel show. I'm your host, Angel Carlton Anderson, and we have the incredible privilege of sitting with none other than Neale Donald Walsch, the renowned author of the Conversations with God book series. Yes, the one that was written in 37 different languages, that was on the bestseller list for 135 straight weeks, the one that has impacted lives, millions of lives across the globe, including my own. I couldn't be more excited than I am today to have Neale sitting in the same virtual room as me to have this wonderful conversation, because Neale has a story that is nothing short of extraordinary. He was in a place, and you'll hear from him, from a place of homelessness and deep despair, like many of us have experienced. And then he embarked on a spiritual journey, had an awakening as such, that had led him to have a conversation with God, a conversation that not only transformed his life, but inspired millions of people to reevaluate and look at their own spiritual beliefs and life purpose. So in this episode, we'll be diving deep into Neale's journey of transformation using my 6 stages of transformation, which is realize, release, rebound, reinvent, resurrect, and respond. We're going to explore these stages and see how they align with Neale's journey as well as his evolution through his incredible life. So, Neale, thank you so much for being here.
It's lovely to be here with you. I'm glad we have the opportunity to share this moment. How may I serve you?
Well, maybe we should start from the beginning, where you and I first crossed paths. Years ago, I think everybody has a CWG story. Anybody who has stumbled across your book has a CWG story. They know exactly where they were at the point in their life where the book came across their hands and transformed their life forever. For me, that was 27 years ago. One of my best friends called me. I had just had a baby. My life was just completely changed after that, after my son was born, and I felt kind of lost. So that book came across my path from a friend, said, drop everything, go to Barnes and Noble and go get this book, Conversations with God. I'm like, what? Go get it. So I did. And I had some major epiphanies about these truths that just resonated within me. And I know you hear these stories all the time, Neale, and I'm no different. But this passion to bring these messages to the world was bubbling up inside me. I went to your website. I found a book study group right there in Dallas, Texas, where I was living at the time. A woman by the name of Louise Kimbrell was having Conversations with God book study groups. So I went and I joined her group, and Louise has turned out to be one of the most beautiful, amazing people in my life. And she's still having study groups, by the way, to this day, talking about the principles of Conversations with God. So through that, it was around the time when you started the School of New Spirituality, which is now evolved into Conversations with God for Parents, which is also a book by Lori Farley and Emily Fillmore. I got involved with that, being very passionate about bringing these messages to our children, and co-created with an amazing group of people what is now today the Conversations with God Family Enrichment Kit for parents and grandparents to now share these spiritual truths with their children and grandchildren. So I have to say that's one of the most important projects I've worked on. It's been an honor, really, to share your messages in such a way. So that's kind of where our path began. So this is kind of like full circle for me. Started with you, my spiritual awakening started with the Conversations with God books, and then here you are as I embark on this next chapter of this new show, relatively new. I can't tell you how I am just filled with immense gratitude right now.
Well, thank you for saying those very kind words. And it's lovely to hear those kinds of thoughts, because all any of us really want to do, I think, is to feel that something we brought to the world has produced benefit in the lives of other people. As I was told in my conversations with God, Neale, your life is not about you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. So when I hear you say these things, I see that apparently the messages of Conversations with God, not me personally, but the messages that I was invited to bring through and to share, that those messages have impacted your life in a beneficial way. So it's lovely to hear that. And thank you for saying those words to me.
Well, you are so very welcome. Speaking of your life purpose, I know it wasn't always that way. For anybody who hasn't seen the Conversations with God movie, you really should look it up and see it. It's a beautiful visual of Neale's life story. But we're going to tell a little bit of it right here. At one point, you were just like this regular guy, right? You were
No,
working.
I still, wait, let me, I got to interrupt you. I still am just this regular guy right now. I really want to resist any attempt to somehow color me or paint the picture of me as something other than just a regular, ordinary guy, because that's all I am. I'm no more wise than anybody else. I'm no more self-aware than anybody else, probably even less than a few people I know. And I don't want people to feel that somehow I sense myself being elevated above the crowd, because I certainly am not. So forgive me for interrupting you, but I still am just a regular guy.
Yes, and I do see you as that, and I do appreciate your humility as well, Neale. I really do believe that you have a greater awareness that has put you on the path that so many of us are on, but you're just a little further down that path. And you're the one looking back on, come on, it's okay. Follow me. So there's something very special about that. And although I do acknowledge your humbleness, you are, because of the ripple effect that you've created in this world, really does take that regular guy persona to a whole new level.
Let me
But
let
but
me
I
let me put all of this into perspective for people who may be, watching or listening to this particular program. All I did was take dictation, ladies and gentlemen. All I did was take dictation. Now, fair enough, it wound up covering around 3,000 pages of dictation, but I didn't make any of it up. I mean, none of it came from me. I simply took down what I was told, and then of course, what I was told brought up other questions from me, and I asked other questions, and I got answers, and I got asked other questions, and I got other answers, until I wound up with 9 books filled with what I call Conversations with God. Now, I was told, Angel, in that dialogue, Neale, you will make of this one day a book, and it will be accessed by many people. And my first thought was, no, that's not going to happen. First of all, who's going to even bother publishing a book because some guy says he's talking to God? I mean, really? So I didn't even, it was a private experience that I was having, very private, personal, frankly, in my own experience, a sacred experience that I was having personally. It never occurred to me to have anybody else even read these handwritten notes. It was all handwritten notes. on a series of yellow legal pads. But when God said to me, "You will make of this one day a book," I thought, well, okay, let's put this to the test, because I thought it was just my imagination. I was, that I was making it all up. And it was okay with me because the information I was getting was pretty interesting, but I thought, okay, now we're going to test the waters here and see if this is true. So I did send my notes. I had them Xeroxed and sent my Xerox notes to a small publishing company on the west coast of the United States. I didn't send it to Random House or Putnam or the major publishers, but I did send it to a small publishing company just to see what would happen. And, we all know the history here. The owner of that small publishing house, they publish 5 or 6 books a year, called me and said, "We want to put this book out. It's a wonderful work of fiction, and we think it's going to really receive a lot of attention." And I said to the publisher, whoa, wait a minute. You're not putting the book out as a work of fiction. And the guy on the other end of the phone said, "Mr. Walsh, are you trying to tell me you think this actually happened to you? We thought you were just writing a work of fiction about a guy who has arguments with and questions for God." I said, no. This is a direct personal experience. You may not publish it as a work of fiction. Just send me the notes back and I'll find a different place to send them. And the man said, "Well, no, not so fast. We'll put it out as a non-fiction book, but frankly, it's not going to find 500 readers because no one's going to want to read a book because some guy out in Oregon says he's talking to God. It's not going to happen. But we'll put it out just to see." And you know what? The publisher was absolutely correct. It didn't find 500 readers. It found 5 million. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying. I was told, "You will make of this a book and it will be accessed by many people." And by golly, if that isn't exactly what happened. So I want people who are watching this program right now to understand I had nothing to do with this other than to have taken dictation. I really took good notes. I'll give myself credit for that. I took very good notes. I used to be a newspaper reporter, so I learned how to take good notes at press conferences and briefings and so forth. So I took pretty good notes, asked some pretty important questions, but then all I did was send it to a publisher, and they did the rest. So just so everyone understands, I really am a regular guy. I don't even get that my awareness is more advanced than anyone else's. I don't really feel that. And you know what's interesting? Nobody who knows me personally would say that. People who know me personally would say, I hope they would say, I'm a nice person and a congenial person, but I don't think they would say he's way ahead of us in terms of his awareness. I think they would say he simply struck a note that touched the lives of people in an extraordinary way.
Well said. And I think that the place where you were in life, where you were willing to listen to that voice, made a big difference too.
Well, I don't think there's no question about that. I agree with you there. I totally agree with you. Well, and I love the way you use that phrase, when you listen to that voice, because you know what, Angel? My experience has been that everyone can hear that voice. It comes to us all in a different way. God communicates, in my experience, with us in 100 different ways across 1,000 moments in every one of our lifetimes. It could be something as simple as the lyrics you hear on the next song on the radio when you're driving down the road, or the chance utterance of a friend you just happen to run into on the street that you haven't seen in years, and he says something to you that has direct impact on what you've been thinking about or going through, or many other different ways that life communicates to life about life through the process of life itself. I happen to call it conversations with God. Some people call it women's intuition. Some people call it an epiphany. Some people say I had a brilliant insight this morning. Now, granted, not everyone probably took notes and kept up the dialogue, but I had enough interest in my mind to do that, and that produced what I call conversations with God. I'm not trying to be overly humble here. I'm trying to be as fair and honest in my description of what happened, so that people don't put me in this place that's somehow higher than anybody else. I do agree with your assessment. If what I was going through at the time hadn't been beyond belief in terms of what could happen to a person. Just to let people know, in the same 10-day period, I lost my relationship, lost my job, and lost my health in the same 10-day period. My wife and I decided that it just wasn't working for us. Frankly, it was not acrimonious. We were not angry with each other. We just came to a gentle understanding. We really need to move forward. This is not working. Okay, fair enough. But I was very sad about it. We had 2 children together, and I was very sad. 5 days later, I lost my job. The corporation I worked for decided that they needed to downsize. And I had very little seniority. In fact, I had no seniority. I was the last person they hired. So I was the first person they had to let go. So I lost my relationship and my job within the same 5 days. But now I'm driving down the road, getting ready to go to an interview for another job. And I'm certain I'm going to get this job because I had all the qualifications. And my former boss gave me a glowing letter of recommendation saying how sad they were they had to lose me, but seniority, ruled the day. So they had to let me go, but they didn't really want to let me go. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get this job, no question. I'm going to get this other job. I never got to the interview. An elderly gentleman turned his car in front of me. I was driving down the road. I'm a slow driver. I wasn't even going that fast, 25, 27 miles an hour. But this elderly gentleman thought he could make a left turn, and he misjudged the distance between our 2 cars and smashed directly into the driver's side of my car. My car wound up as a total wreck. It was just a mesh of crunched metal, and with me still inside of it. When they managed to extract me and pull me out, it was discovered that I had broken my neck with the impact of the crash. Of course, they rushed me to the hospital. And by the way, they told me that I didn't have a hairline fracture. I can still remember the wording on the report. It said that I had suffered a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. That's a break in your neck big enough to put a pencil through.
Wow.
It wasn't a hairline fracture. And what the doctor said to me when I woke up from the anesthesia was, "You're lucky to still be alive. And we can't believe not only did you survive that accident with a break in your neck that big, but you're not even semi-paralyzed. Most people would be at least paralyzed from the neck down. You have suffered neither consequence." And he leaned over the hospital table and he said to me, "What do you intend to do with the rest of your life? Because you've been given a gift that I rarely see in this emergency room." And so I was, pondering that same question. I couldn't get a job anywhere because nobody would hire me. They fitted me with what is known in the business as a Philadelphia collar. That's a plastic collar that you wear. It holds your head up. And the doctor said, "Do not take this collar off. I don't care what you're doing. Showering." He said, "I'm taking a bath. I don't care whether you're swimming. I don't care if you're making mad love with somebody. You will not take this collar off because it's holding your head up." Oh, okay. I said, I get the picture. But you know what, Angel? Nobody would hire me. I was going to, job interviews. Finally, the 7th man to interview me was honest with me. He said, "Mr. Walsch, I have to tell you, we can't hire you while you're wearing that therapeutic device around your neck. One wrong move on the job and we're paying your hospital bills for the next 5 years.
Wow.
You come to us when you're totally free of, and you're totally rehabilitated. We'd hire you in 30 seconds. You got all the qualifications we need." So I was out of work and out of luck. Finally, the landlord had I was living in a little apartment above somebody's garage, but, it was just a place to be. But he had to ask me to leave. He evicted me because I couldn't pay the rent. I had run out of my savings and I couldn't get employed anywhere. I had no money left. I was down to my last few dollars. I mean, literally my last 25 or $28. And I wound up living on the street. But you know what? I thought I can do this for a couple of weeks. I can manage it. Like I'll make this work. And then I'll find a job someplace. But it wasn't a couple of weeks. I wound up living on the sidewalk for a year. 2 weeks shy of 1 year, living on the outside, sleeping on the ground, in the rain, in the snow, in the cold. And I mean, it was really cold at that time in Oregon, which is not exactly a southern state. And so I was like, oh, wow. When I finally did wind up back in a little apartment somewhere because I got a part-time job, I wound up working as a fill-in on weekends for a regular weekly employee. And I got a little job, and I found a little one-room flat somewhere. That's when I woke up, Angel, in the middle of the night, about 4:23 in the morning, and I was angry with life, angry with God. I said, what do you want from me? How much more can one person take? I mean, am I such a bad person that I deserve this kind of a life? What is it that I don't understand about how life works? I demand answers. I'm writing an angry letter to God on a yellow legal pad that happened to be on my coffee table. And honestly, I started receiving answers. I said, if you've got answers, I'm saying to myself, I'd sure as hell like to know what they are. And a voice in my head said, you are sure as hell, Neale, about a lot of things. But wouldn't you rather be sure as heaven? And I thought, okay, what's that supposed to mean? And that's when I began receiving answers to the questions that I was asking. What does it take to make life work? And what don't I understand about this whole process? And who is this person called God anyway? Is there even that person? Because if there is, why isn't he helping me out here? What's going on? And that resulted in the dialogue that you've been talking about. So I'm sorry to go on and on and on like this, but I thought I would just put it into perspective so people could understand where I'm coming from and how I got here. Is that fair?
No, absolutely perfect. Because in my research, let's call it, since reading your books 27 years ago, 28 years ago, I started really paying attention to this thing called spiritual awakening. And it appears as though it starts with some sort of change, drastic change, a crisis, a trauma, an event. I mean, for me, it was having a baby, but those things, an encounter with someone or an encounter with a book, but it's an epiphany. These things all set that spiritual awakening journey into motion. And you were bombarded with change, one right after the next.
Yeah, I called it the triple whammy.
Yeah, yeah. And that's when we realize life will never be the same. That's the realize stage. That's the oh shift. Life is changing. And I don't know where I'm going. And that's so what was that moment for you when you realized your life was completely changing and that moment of transformation or awakening?
Well, it was just that. It was an awakening from my slumber. Because, I was in this sleepwalking stage where I thought that, there were certain things all I had to do is obey the rules, do what I was asked to do by my culture, by my society, and I'd make out reasonably well. Maybe a few bad things would happen now and then, but I would make out reasonably well. So I was walking around like a sleepwalker, just not paying much attention to anything in particular, except just do what you're asked to do. You pay your dues, go to work every day, show up, be reasonably responsible, be kind to people, be a good person, and things will work out. But by the way, I want to pick a point, by the way, about things working out. I don't think it's that I don't want to give people the impression that things have to fall apart and you have to have a series of disasters in order for you to have a spiritual awakening. Some people have a spiritual awakening who are having perfectly glorious lives. and have nothing to say about negativity in their life because they've had very little negativity in their life. So it's not necessary for your life to be falling apart in order for you to have a spiritual awakening. But to answer your question, what was that like for me? For me, it was like waking up. It was like somebody walked into my bedroom and gave me a gentle, not a severe, but just a gentle tap on the face. Just like, hey, hey, hey. And I woke up, what? And then I realized, oh, there's more going on here than meets the eye. Shakespeare was right. There are more things in heaven and earth ratio than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, many times we get hit upside the head. First it's a tap on the shoulder with a feather, and then it's a brick. And then these major changes that inspire us to tap into that higher voice. I think that's when people turn to God and start praying and asking for favors, if you will. Some people become aware of the awakening that they're having, but I feel like there's some that don't. So
You think so? Honey, they're all over the place.
I know, but
People
they're aware, but they're not. Some are
paying
more.
attention. They're not paying attention to what they're aware of.
Exactly. Exactly. And you said in one of the books, there are people who know they know. And
There are people who know, and then
yes,
there are those who know that they know. And those are two entirely different groups of people.
yeah. So how can others become more aware of this knowing, of those moments of life where they are wake-up calls for a higher spiritual connection to their higher self, to God, to whatever one calls it?
I think by watching more closely to exactly what's going on. And I don't mean, again, necessarily the major events, a car accident or having a baby, major life events. Watch what's going on in all the moments of your life. Just, of course, you don't have to be so studious about it, but just also don't be oblivious. Like, listen to what people happen to be saying. You're driving down the road and you turn the corner on the highway, and there's a billboard with 23 words written, in 4 feet letters, 4 foot tall letters on the billboard that just happen to answer a question that you've been asking yourself for the past 2 months, because in a commercial message on the billboard. And so I guess my answer to your question would be stay awake. Don't let life go in one ear and out the other. Listen to what's happening, watch what's happening, pay attention to what's happening, and let yourself really evaluate all the information that life is bringing you, including an invitation to wake up. For instance, just as one silly example, you're on your computer one day and you decide, I think I'll just watch a little. I've heard a little bit about this podcast run by a lady named Angel. I think I'll just watch this podcast, and then, wow, the podcast brings you a huge message. Wake up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's like become an observer of your own life when you start noticing. And I think that's what you're saying is just start noticing, because there's so many times we just go through life and blow it off as, well, that was an interesting coincidence.
Yeah, yes, precisely. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was told in conversations with God that there are no coincidences in the universe. Nothing happens by chance.
Yeah. Well, one of the profound truths that resonated with me immediately. So you realize you're having this awakening. And in my studies of the process that we go through when we experience transformation, there is a stage where we are releasing or letting go of something, be it old beliefs, habits, behaviors, thought patterns.
Or all of the above.
Yeah, it could all happen at once. And sometimes we do it intentionally, and other times the universe just kind of releases things for you, as in your case, relationships, jobs. It's like, nope, you're not going down that path. So it's to create that space for this newness to seep in.
I think we should discuss what it is we're waking up to, because
Mm,
people are
yes.
watching this program and they're saying, okay, they've been talking now for 7 minutes about waking up, waking up, waking up. Waking up to what? And I would like to offer this um, observation. I think what we're waking up to is who we really are. You know, most people think that this is who they are. I'm my body. And some people think, no, well, I'm kind of like my body and my mind. My body, and this is who I am. I'm my body and my mind. And if you walk down the street and ask 10 people, what are you? Very few people will answer accurately. They might say, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a podcaster, I'm a newspaper editor, I'm a teacher, I'm a parent at home raising 3 children, whatever they might say. But very few people, if any of them, will say, I'm a spiritual entity. I am a soul having a physical experience. But once we decide, oh, that's what's going on. Oh, that's my true identity. I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience. That changes everything. That creates a different context within which I encounter all the events and circumstances of my life. So then we would have to ask ourselves, I mean, the average person would ask themselves, I would think, the same question I asked myself after God told me, Neale, you're not your body and you're not your mind. Those are pieces of equipment. Those are simply tools that who you really are uses to serve your agenda. So of course I said to God, okay, you got me. What's my agenda? If this is not who I am, if I'm not supposed to, get the car, get the girl, get the job, get the house, get the wife, get the better job, get the better car, get the better wife, what am I supposed to be doing here? What's the point? If I really am a spiritual entity, which sounds very elevated, oh wow, I'm a spiritual entity, then why am I in this messy, crazy world? What's the point of this? Why didn't I just stay there? Where presumably I came from, and where presumably, hopefully, I'm going when this mess is over. What's the point of all of this? And that becomes what we wake up to. So when we talk here for 15 minutes about waking up, waking up, waking up, it's fair for a person to say, wake up to what? And my answer is, wake up to who you are and why you're here. And by the way, folks, why you're here has nothing to do with your career, your job, your daily activities. That's not to say that your daily activities wouldn't impact why you're here, but you didn't come here to do those things. You came here to be something. And the way you do whatever you do is your announcement of what you've chosen to be, of what your soul's agenda really is. And I'm going to say something rather daring in some people's mind. I was told that what we're here to be is an individuation of divinity. That every soul, every single soul is an individual expression of God. And we have come to the physical realm in order that we might experience that. Not just know it conceptually, but actually experience it in our life. Because there's one thing to know, just to use a simple example. Let's say I know that I'm generous. You know what? I think I am a generous person. I like to think I'm generous with, but if I want to experience being a generous person, I would have to move through life in a way that presented me with opportunities to experience that. And when those opportunities arose, then I'd be grateful for those moments because they gave me an opportunity to demonstrate who I understand myself to be. But that's an easy one. Supposing that it's forgiveness. Supposing I want to demonstrate myself to be the epitome of forgiveness. Am I ready to do that? Especially when life brings me situations and opportunities that invite me to demonstrate myself as the personification of compassion and forgiveness. So it turns out you can't be the light unless you find yourself in the darkness. Therefore, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are. And that all those whose lives you touch, by the way, might know who they really are as well. But, people say, oh, Neale Donald Walsch, he's a new thought author, one of those new age guys. But guess what? This is not new age philosophy. Somebody told us 2,000 years ago, do unto others as you would have it done unto you. The so-called golden rule. But God said to me, Neale, I'm going to give you the platinum rule. I said, the platinum rule? God said, well, platinum is even more valuable than gold. Did you know that? I said, well, I guess I knew that, but what's the platinum rule? God said, the platinum rule is do unto others as they would have it done unto them. Talk about a new way to experience my life. Wow.
Wow.
I mean, I have to treat people of a different skin color the way they would like to be treated. I mean, I have to treat people of a different religion the way they would like to be treated. I mean, I have to treat people of a different nationality the way they would like to be treated. Oh, I see. Interesting.
Yes. What an incredible perspective. And that we need today more than ever as we see the different walks of life, and we're all on this journey together, and we are all connected. And as you have said a million times, we are one.
Angel, interesting you should bring that up because that was the very first message that I received in 3,000 pages of dialogue. The very first message I received. Neale, we are all one. There is only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. When you see the person across the room, even those who have different viewpoints from yours, different ideas, different political persuasions, different religions, different genders, different sexual orientations. When you see the person across the room as simply another version of you, you looking somewhat different, but still simply a part of you, then your whole life begins to change. And I said to God, wait a minute, you mean you want me to be, I don't agree with this person's political point of view. They're crazy. I can't believe they're saying those things. Or I don't believe with this person's sexual orientation. What's going on with that person? Or I don't believe with this person's religion. You mean they don't belong to my religion? Then they're going to hell. I don't understand. And God said, love, love, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And do good to those who do you evil, and be kind to those with whom you dramatically disagree. And when a man slaps you on the right cheek, turn and offer him your left. And when a man steals your coat, give him your shirt as well. And when a man demands that you walk 1 mile with him, go with him, twain. It's really quite simple.
It is simple. It is simple. It's a hard thing to grasp onto, that we are connected because we're separated by these earth suits and by our thinking, as you pointed out. So how can one feel that connection? It's something that we have to feel in order to experience.
Well, how I feel the connection is by asking a question that my wonderful colleague, Byron Katie, invites us to ask. Is there anything I see in here, in myself, that I'm seeing over there in that other person? Yeah, and when I identify, oh, wait a minute, you know what? Maybe I wouldn't say exactly the thing they just said. Maybe I wouldn't do precisely what they've just done. But I felt a lot of those same emotions, a lot of those same ideas have arisen in my own mind. I've had some of the same idea. I can see parts of me over there. As soon as I'm able to see part of me in the person across the room, I start to have an entirely different response to the person across the room when they are acting, thinking, or behaving in a way with which I initially do not agree. Now, that doesn't mean that I've become a proponent of what they're proposing. It doesn't mean that I agree with what they're thinking, saying, or doing. It doesn't mean that I want them to continue it, but it does mean that I understand how it could be possible for a person to think, say, or do those things. And what I've learned from conversations with God is understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master.
That's a simple step right there. Simple step. And those relationships with one another is how we get to know who we are. We wouldn't know ourselves unless it was in relation to another being.
That's
For
precisely
that
correct.
reflection.
That's exactly right, which is why, in prison, when they put you in a cell all by yourself, what do they call that? Isolation or whatever they call that.
Solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement. That's why it's the worst punishment you can get in prison, to be put in solitary, because you can't even experience who you are, because there's nothing else. There isn't even that which you are not. And in the absence of even what you are not, what you are is not. That is, it can't be experienced.
Once you have this envision and using the power of imagination, because I think that is the doorway to see the highest, greatest, grandest version taken right out of CWG of ourselves. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How are you behaving? And you see people just lift up in the room as if, oh yeah, that's who I am. That's my potential. And it's just a start. It's just a peek at what you're saying to get to that next greatest version of who you are. But there's something that needs to be let go of, something that needs to be released. And a lot of times I find it's fear or traumas or limiting beliefs, struggles that people hang on to.
I can tell you what it is for me. What I need to let go of in one sentence is the need to be right. When the person across the room is saying something or doing something that I absolutely do not agree with, in the past, I have found myself needing to be right. So I would get into an interaction with them that would demonstrate or seek to demonstrate that I'm right and you're wrong. No, you don't understand. You got it all wrong. I'm totally right here. So, and to be honest with you, to be dreadfully honest with you, that's why I lost 6 relationships. Angel, I'm not bragging. I'm just sadly saying I've been married 7 times. Not 2 times, not 3 times, not 4 times. I've had 7 wives. And I'm not bragging about it. I'm very sad about it, my most recent marriage has lasted 17 years, which is an amazing thing for me because I finally gave up the need to be right. I've learned to say magic words. The person across the room is disagreeing with me. These are the magic words I've learned to say. I can understand how you could feel that way. I may not join you in that feeling. I may not agree with why you're feeling, but I can understand how you could feel that way. I'm not going to make you feel like you're from Mars and you're totally, off base. I can understand how you could feel that way. And in fact, if I'm really totally honest, I can even see a small little part of me that has felt that way also in my life. I just didn't act it out the way you're acting it out. But yeah, so I can understand how you can feel that way. And then I ask myself, Angel, life's magic question. I do it internally, I don't do it out loud. But the internal question that I ask myself whenever I'm involved in an interaction with another person or even another circumstance in life with which I disagree, that's unwelcome. When I encounter an unwelcome event or circumstance, the first question I ask myself is, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? Okay, now wait a minute. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And the agenda of my soul is to announce and declare, to express and fulfill, to experience and to demonstrate who I really am. In the next grandest version of the greatest vision I ever held about that. Now I see what this incident has to do with the agenda of my soul, and that recontextualizes my entire response.
That question is so profound. If we only asked the trauma, the fear, those elements, the struggles that we tend to hang on to that kind of prevents us from moving down this beautiful awakening path to get to know ourselves. If we just ask that question, that's a beautiful answer to that question. Because the answer is in the trauma. It's an invitation to get to know yourself, another version of yourself.
I call it the God solution.
Mm.
I've written a book called The God Solution. And it's only about 2 or 3 years old. It's one of my most recent writings. That's a kind of a collection of the major messages in the 9-book CWG series. Anyone who wants a copy of The God Solution, if you send me an email, I'll send you a digital file. No cost, free, just because I want everyone to read The God Solution. So you drop me a note and say, Neale, send me a copy, digital version of The God Solution, the author's manuscript, right off my keyboard, right off of my computer. And I'll email it right back to you within 24 hours or less. And
Which email should they use?
well, my email address is very, very difficult to remember. Most people can't remember it for anything. Neale@nealedonaldwalsch.com.
I will put it up there so everybody spells your name correctly. Excellent. What a gift. Thank you for offering those who are listening and
Yeah,
watching that beautiful gift.
from the for what it's worth department. I try to sell anybody a bill of goods. If you read the book and say, "Oh, this is just nonsense," then by golly, throw it out. Erase it, delete it, toss it away. But so it's from the for what it's worth department.
Okay. So I find that releasing is probably the hardest part about the transformation journey. When things have been tossed out of our lives unexpectedly, or when we're through crisis and trauma, realizing we can't hang on to certain relationships or what have you. There seems to be that point where it's an emptiness, a void, a fear of the unknown. It's scary.
Unless it's not.
It can be scary, right? It doesn't have to be scary. Once you
No.
understand that this is part of the process,
Well,
that
it's even
natural.
more than, it's even bigger than that. What God said to me is, Neil, ground zero. When you're at ground zero, that's the best place to be, because
Yeah,
ground zero gives you a place to start creating your life exactly the way you want it to be.
totally.
So,
Totally.
I have a new acronym for fear. Most people say that fear is, false evidence appearing real. That's the big new age acronym.
Yeah.
False evidence appearing real. But you know what? For me, the acronym FEAR, feeling excited and ready.
Yes. I like it. And that's exactly what you should apply in this next stage of transformation, which I call the rebound stage, which is really a point of rejuvenation, of recalibration, of looking back on your story and go, oh my gosh, seeing how far you've come. It's a time of self-care. It's a time where we start seeking out spiritual books and retreats and wanting to learn more. It's a time where curiosity starts to develop. But it can also be a time of depression, isolation, when you're losing people that just don't get you anymore. They don't relate to what you're talking about. It can be a place of despair. So, what personal insights, or maybe from your material, do you have on this place and the inner work that may be helpful for that spiritual rejuvenation so that you can get ready for that next stage, that rebuilding and the reinventing stage?
Well, it's something I said earlier. God said to me, Neil, your life has nothing to do with you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. So if I find myself falling into deep despair or deep depression, and you're right, it's possible for people to fall into that experience. I look outside of myself just for a moment to see if I know or have observed anybody else who's in deep despair or deep depression. And even if I don't know anybody in that place, I might even put a little sticker, a little piece of paper on a bulletin board at a bookstore or in a grocery store that says, Depression and Despair Healing Group, based on the messages and conversations with God. Tuesdays, 7:30 till 9 p.m. A fee is not required. And people call and they say, really? Are you a psychiatrist or a psychologist offering? I said, no, none of that. No, but I have some ideas on how we could all overcome deep depression and deep despair with a different spiritual point of view. And, it may not be your cup of tea. Come to one night. It doesn't cost anything. If you don't get it, then don't come back. But if you do get it, by all means, come back and share it with other people. I started such a thing years ago, and there was like 2 people there, then 8, then 16, then 25, then 40. And then one day, a few years later, I was invited to give a little talk in Miami. There were 3,000 people in the auditorium. Not bragging, just saying. When you look outside of yourself and to see if you can heal what is bothering you elsewhere, give to others what you would like to receive in your own life. Because God said to me, Neil, what flows through you sticks to you. So that would be my response to your question. The tool I would give people is find another who is experiencing what you are experiencing. You won't have to go very far. It's all over the world. And allow yourself to join them and invite them to join you on the journey to healing and watch everything change.
Mm,
So God said to me,
so
Neale,
true.
God said to me, Neale, don't be a seeker. Do not seek wisdom, clarity, understanding, healing. Be a source. Do not be a seeker, be a source of whatever it is you want in your life. Be the source of it in the life of another. And I said to God, well, what if I don't have it to give? I can't be a source of happiness if I'm not happy. I can't be a source of understanding or wisdom if I have no understanding or wisdom. And God said to me, in the moment that another person needs happiness, understanding, and wisdom, it will amaze you how much of it you can offer if you choose to. Do unto others what they would have done unto them.
Mm. Perfect. That is the best way to rebound and rejuvenate when you feel like you don't have it to give and you find it within you. It's been there all along.
And of course, what you give to another, you give to yourself because there's really only one of us in the room.
Yes.
And what flows through you sticks to you.
So very true. And once you move through those emotions that you have to feel to heal and help others heal, to heal yourself, then you do step into this reinventing stage, this rebuilding of who you are stage. You start exercising the behaviors and the attitudes of that vision, that highest, grandest, greatest vision of who you are. And you're telling your story and you're inspiring others, and you begin to take steps in that direction because you're feeling this calling in that direction. You may stumble and fall and go, I don't like the way I handled that. I'm going to try again next time. Kind of like a toddler who's learning to walk. They pick themselves up and they're just determined because that vision and that calling is so strong. In your reinvented life from someone who felt lost and alone at one time to becoming a global spiritual teacher and best-selling author. How did you take that leap of faith, I guess, to reinvent yourself and align
First
with
of all, I'm
this
not a
new
spiritual.
purpose?
First of all, I'm going to reject the notion that I'm a spiritual teacher. Folks, you didn't hear her say that. I'm not a spiritual teacher. Uh, uh, I wrote a book in which I shared what was given to me to share, but I'm not a spiritual teacher. However, to answer your question directly,
Spiritual messenger.
thank you,
Okay,
thank you.
we'll go
Truly,
with that.
I'll embrace that notion. Messenger, yes. I managed to embrace it, and I managed to step into it through a magical device, not needing any particular outcome.
Mm.
I let go of my need to have the response be a specific way when it comes back to me. When I go out and give a talk to an audience, or when I do a podcast such as this one, which has many people watching and listening, I don't have a need inside of me to have even you agree with me. I don't need agreement. I don't need anyone to approve. I simply have let go of my need for agreement and approval. And that has freed me from any nervousness or any reluctance to share what it is that I have come to lovingly share.
Yes. That has been the biggest lesson in life, is not to be attached to the outcome and knowing that it's going to show up the way it's supposed to show up, not the way I think it's supposed to show up. I have the vision of myself. I just need to stay with that because it will show up. It's just going to surprise you sometimes in ways that will really delight you. That's mine and my husband's new word, delight. Just a wonderful little vibe. I have been delighted so many times with what has shown up by not expecting it to be one way, just one way. That is a beautiful piece of advice for the reinventing stage. Because the next stage of transformation, and again, this is not linear because you've been talking about these things all along. Resurrect. It's when you really resurrect to that highest vision of who you are. You're walking the talk. It's on autopilot. Everything's coming natural. You feel like you're on top of the world. You're in the flow of life. You're manifesting things almost instantaneously. It is a beautiful place to reside. And I know you've been there. We go in and out of this place, it seems like, and then boom, another change happens to put us back on that cycle. But even after your spiritual awakening, can you talk about how you've continued to resurrect yourself and rise above obstacles? Maybe talk about the obstacles that you've had to cross on this path.
I just keep my eye on the goal. I remain clear about what my agenda is, what I'm doing here. I didn't come here to get the guy, get the girl, get the car, get the job, get the house, get the better car, get the better job. All those things I was mentioning before. I don't need to have, the corner office with my name on the door. I don't need to have a building on the corner with my name on the building. I don't need to have any particular aggrandizement or even acknowledgement. It's just, I came here to experience the grandest version I ever held about who I am. And I have this idea that when I leave here, when my day to depart comes, I will hear, hopefully, the following words. Well done, good and faithful servant.
I have no doubt, Neale. I have no doubt.
Thank you for having me on this program.
Thank you for your time today and allowing me to take you through the transformation journey as I see it. Again, Neale, your story is a testament to the power of transformation, to faith, to finding your purpose in the most unexpected places. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom with all of us today. I know this conversation will leave a lasting impact for everyone listening. So to our listeners, if you are ready to embark on your own transformational journey, this episode is just the beginning. Don't miss the incredible insights that Neale has shared in his books, and let today be the start of something extraordinary for you. You can go to nealedonaldwalsch.com to learn more about his extraordinary work and the messages that he brings to the world that has changed the world. Again, Neale, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
It's very kind of you to say those things, Angel, and I appreciate you as well. Blessed be.
Bye-bye. For now. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I so appreciate you being here. I want to remind you to go to transformwithangel.com and download your free book, my latest book, How to Conquer Anything. Quick manual on how to get through some of these transformative times we're living in. Remember to like this video, share it with somebody who needs to hear it, make a comment. I want to know your thoughts. And of course, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. All right, I will see you next time.